You've waited all year, and this Saturday it's finally here. Old Navy's famous $1 flip-flops are back for just one day only. Polish up your petties and hurry in for flip-flops for the whole family for just $1. This Saturday only at Old Navy and OldNavy.com. Valid 6/24, limit 10, solid colors only.
Are you weighed down by the burdens of life? Do you find yourself encouraged by the Word of God on Sunday, but lose momentum shortly thereafter? Well, welcome to Sunday Soul Service, an hour designed to strengthen, encourage, and motivate you to keep pushing along the journey we call life. This is Dr. Renee Sunday, the platform builder, encouraging you to believe, trust, and walk it out.
Welcome to the Sunday Soul Service. I'm Letitia Bates, life coach and founder of At the Wheel Coaching, driving your life to higher ground. Mr. McGee, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. These are the famous lines from the 80s hit show, The Incredible Hulk. David Banner is frustrated because Mr. McGee is trying to expose the green creature that comes out of nowhere and damages things. Does the creature come out of nowhere? Absolutely not. Nothing comes from nowhere, and everything comes. You see, David Banner was a scientist. His wife was trapped in a car that exploded, and she died. He felt powerless. He then went into a lab and overexposed himself to chemicals, gamma rays, that gave him power when he felt powerless. So every time David Banner feels trapped and powerless, he becomes the big, powerful, but angry Hulk. In this form, he cannot talk. He cannot smile. He cannot do anything but try to save himself and those he believes to be powerless. In other words, all of his power goes to the anger. Anger is not about being mad. It is about feeling helpless, hopeless, and powerless. Like Dr. Banner, when we feel these paralyzing emotions, it's based on the past. Any problem you're having with anger is based on the past. How do you know? The future hasn't happened yet. So here's the real question. Is your past at the wheel of your life? If the pain of your past has been keeping you down, start driving your life to higher ground. When we understand deep in our spirit that we are trying to feel power in the wake of feeling powerless, we can cool the heat of our anger. To help us dig a little deeper, the incredible Dr. Renee Sunday and the joy guru Alicia Brown are here. Let's start with Dr. Sunday. Hello, Dr. Sunday. Please share your thoughts.
Thank you so much. Letitia Bates, oh, Lord, Life Coach. I mean, that was my favorite show growing up. And so I had to do a flashback. You know, I thought about it. I said, and I used to get up, me and my brother, and play like we were the Hulk when he used to get out, out of his clothes. So that made me laugh. But, when we were looking at that show, we didn't realize what you just said. Oh, wow, the anger when he went into the lab, etc., was a reflection of what happened to his wife. Wow. And
that's how it all started.
For bringing this up. Yeah, I commend you for bringing this topic out, because just what you just said, a lot of us don't realize where a lot of things stem from in our life. And anger is a big thing. It's a big thing that a lot of us, we have unforgiveness. We have so many things I know you're going to get into, so I don't want to jump the gun. But anger, it shows. People can see anger in your eyes, which is the gateway of our whole body. Anger can really mess things up in your life. So I'm glad to be part of this conversation with you and the Joy Guru, because we're going to peel back the layers, and we're going to get some results after this.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, Ms. Alicia Brown, what are your thoughts?
I love it. I have seen The Incredible Hulk, so I do know what it is. And again, like Dr. Sunday, I never saw any of those things in it. I never even thought. And, every show, they do show that in the beginning real. So, but I never put it together. That is what all of his anger is based upon, that past event. And then, when we look at things in our life, a lot of time it's like, no, it's not the past, it is the future because I'm worried about this or, I'm right here in the present with this person and this person is doing this. So, no, it's not my past. But when you really break it down, no, your reaction to that event, that person, that circumstance, it is based on past information. So I always love your show when you say it's the past driving you. That's just such a, reflective moment to stop and think, yeah, my responses, my reaction, even my assumptions are often based on the past. Why? Because the future hasn't happened. Love it.
Hasn't happened yet. And let me tell you, when I started doing my own personal work on because I love The Incredible Hulk like Dr. Sunday growing up, and me and my brother watched it, and my grandma, we watched it religiously every week. And when I started doing the work on dealing with my past issues, my abuse issues, my abandonment issues, all the painful events, I was moved to watch the show. And I wanted to watch it from the very beginning. And then that's when I recalled, that's what happened. He was so powerless, he could not stand the idea that he was that powerless. So he overexposed himself. And it literally made him something else. His anger was something outside of any of his sense of control, and it turned him into somebody else.
Wow. Oh, Lord.
And so I think this is a really important it's an important topic because, we talk about, the angry black woman or people with anger issues or anger management issues. And it isn't about a particular event that's happening now. It's a reaction that people have learned to guard themselves against that feeling of the helplessness, the hopelessness, and the powerlessness. And when we understand that about ourselves, we can have more compassion for ourselves, and we can also extend more compassion to those who are dealing with anger.
Yes. I love it.
That is so amazing because we've seen it in so many angles. I mean, especially, oh, Lord, just in traffic, how people drive, even to the point that all the things we've been seeing in media lately. And people, unfortunately, our young people are seeing, I'm going to say us, meaning adults, when we have drive-bys, when we have all the shooting at the church, at the, the UPS was the recent one, and even at the ball game up in Virginia, the thing that we as a people, and I'm going to just say we as a people, I'm not pointing out any, particular person, we don't know how to handle the anger, like you said,
no.
And it's amazing how many things we bring from our childhood, good or bad.
Yes, yes.
Well,
and you're so
we really don't know. Well, we were not designed to be powerless. We haven't been given the spirit of fear or powerlessness. That's not how we're designed to be. So when we have such a sense of that powerlessness or that helplessness or that hopelessness, and it's so strong, we employ the anger to keep us separated from that feeling of powerlessness. It's not natural. So the question is, how do we deal with the helplessness? How do we deal with the hopelessness? How do we deal with the powerlessness?
I'm ready to hear that answer.
And what I say to that, well, you know what? We have to have respect and reverence for what we go through. When people say stuff like, oh, get over it, that was 20 years ago, or, whatever, she's in her feelings, right? That those are not things that help us deal with what's going on with us. In my experience, being willing to go back to those painful events, love and respect the part of you who survived it, and then do what you need to do to process that. And of course, my favorite thing to do in my coaching practice is tapping, because it's the tapping that helps to activate your body's relaxation response to collapse that stress response. And that is a really effective way of dealing with that helplessness. So for example, you take a child who's a 5-year-old, and let's say that child is 5 years old and they're, on the playground and everybody's teasing that child. That child really has no power. Maybe they're teasing the child about their legs. So now that same child is now an adult who's 40 years old and doesn't wear shorts because she's afraid to expose her legs because that's what happened to her on the playground. If she's not willing to go back and deal with that feeling that she had then, it'll continue to carry throughout her whole life. So when you think about like unprocessed trauma, yeah, we know about the big stuff. We know, the 9/11 type things that really rock the whole world, or someone's murdered in your family that really rocks the whole world. But that's not the only way it gets processed. It also gets processed in those events like we just talked about, like that child on the playground. And so there's like a billion of these things that happen that somehow we know there's a root to it, but there's a fear of going back to deal with it.
Well, let me ask you this, Letitia, because I love how the tapping, that when you show us how to do that and how we can decrease the stress. But, when we say hopelessness, when we say that we don't have the power, or if we even go to, depression, anxiety, all those things that can develop from that or present at the same time, a lot of times we as humans, and I'm going to say it that way, we don't know how it affects our life. And I know on the Incredible Hulk, we know what all those things that he did when he became that Hulk. I mean, he really, was isolated. He used to, when he realized what was going on, he went back to himself and he had to hide. He was, he was like, oh, what did I do when I was in this state? Tell us, because we don't realize when we have that spirit of anger, I'm going to just say it that way, or of uncontrol, how did that really affect our lives? I mean, especially now when we're trying to help other people. And I'm going to just be real, even if we're in leadership, we're in the pulpit, we're driving a school bus, how is that really affecting us? Because I think a lot of people, we take things for granted and don't realize how, one, is affecting others, and others, how we're affecting ourselves as well.
Well, so if you think about what David Banner actually did, most of the episodes were focused on him going from place to place, trying to find a way to get rid of what he created. Right? Because he would go into this rage, he'd become the Hulk, he'd tear up a bunch of stuff, and like you said, he'd go somewhere, he'd hide, he'd come back to himself, and then he was constantly looking for a way to get control of the anger. So what that means is that he was aware that there was a part of him that he created based on a situation that he needed to control. And so when we get angry in that, in the heat of that, that's not the place to search for the answer, because you can't find it there, because your emotions are just too high. But when you come down from that, you can go back into that and say, okay, what was really going on with me? You can go into an internal search to figure out what is driving that behavior. And what typically is at the root of it is not some day that you got mad. It's usually some other feeling like the powerlessness that you don't want to face. And so when I'm working with my clients, what I help them do is usually associated to a memory, an experience that they can recall, some event that happened, and I help them go back to that place in their mind, right? And then we use the tapping. We tap on the acupressure point so that stress response that they're feeling as they think about it is calmed and relaxed. And from that place, they have more perspective about what really happened to them. But we just, if we're feeling feelings or doing things that are not consistent with what we want, then we have to be willing to do a little investigation. We got to be willing to go from where we got to go to find the answer. That's what he did.
So, Letitia, how would you advise someone that says when they do this investigation you're talking about, they cannot find the source?
So what you can do, so typically there is a pattern. So let's just take traffic, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because road rage is a big thing.
Yes.
So, you're on somebody cuts you off in traffic, and you're not just a little annoyed, you want to slash their tires. That's a good sign. You know what I mean? It's a good sign that it's a little bit deeper than you just trying to get, to Walmart.
Right.
So what you can do, when you get there, and I use a 60-minute rule for myself personally. And what that means is if something activates me and I get angry about something or sad about something or whatever, you've got natural human emotions. But if 60 minutes, like an hour later, if I'm still replaying it and I'm still mad and I'm still hurt or I'm still sad, that is my sign it's deeper than just this moment.
Okay.
Right? So I want to be clear here because we do have sadness. We've got anger. These are basic human emotions. But when you are overexposed to them, that's a clear sign that it's something deeper than just what this moment produced. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad you said that because – I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, no, I just wanted to point out it was amazing that we're talking about this at this present time. I always say God has a sense of humor because I did get angry today. And I know the Word of God says, you slow the anger, but make sure you don't sin. And I'm so glad you said what you said because I'm a person, I like to be near the city, but I live kind of still in the country atmosphere. So what I do is I look outside in nature and see how pretty the trees are, the deers walking around, squirrels and stuff. And like you say, I do something similar because I say, okay, I can't be upset over 5-10 minutes. That's usually just my nature. And so I'm so glad you already kind of healed me by saying that because, it makes you feel some kind of way. You feel some kind of way when you get anger, and stuff. And I say, okay, so you've already kind of helped me out with that because some people think, and I'm so glad you said that we should not have anger at all. So thank you for saying that.
Of course we should have anger. I mean, we have tears. We have a whole array of emotions that are available to us as we go through and experience life. So this is not about never being angry again. This is about not allowing anger to take on a whole new form that you have no control over. That's why I love the analogy of the Hulk, because that's what happened. It became something that he could no longer control. So that's what I was saying about the 60-minute rule that I offer myself. If I'm still outraged 60 minutes later, that's a clue. This is not just, the person tried to cut me off in traffic. I'm feeling some kind of way about this based on something else. And sometimes it may not even appear to be related. But the question that I ask myself is, where have I felt this feeling before? When have I had this feeling before? And the feeling is in your body somewhere, right? It's in your chest, it's in your stomach, it's in your back. You know that heat that you feel when you get mad? And you can ask yourself, when have I felt this way before, this feeling? And by asking yourself, something will come up. And it's usually something not very pleasant. And that is when I tap, because I walk my talk. So when I'm aware that something has struck me and I'm having this reaction to it, and it's 60 minutes later and I'm still activated in that way, I'm going in. And I'm going to say, okay, when have I felt this before? What did I see? What did I hear? How did I feel? And I'm going to go into that experience, and that's when I use the tapping to activate my body's relaxation response. It's extremely effective.
So you alluded to that, and for people who this may be the first show that they're listening to, could you just briefly explain to them what is this tapping that you're talking about? How does that work?
Yes, that's a great point. So what tapping does, you just use your two fingers and you're tapping on acupressure points. And the points are simple. If you go to my website, atthewillcoaching.com, there is a whole page on tapping. There's a video on how to do it. And there's also a little sheet that shows you the tapping points. But it's between your eyes, and then it's right there on the side of your eye, like right at the edge of your eye. And then it's under your eye. Then it's where your collarbone is, right about where your necklace would fall. And then you grab your wrist. And what these are meridian points. They're acupressure points. So if you were going to an acupuncturist, they would be using needles. But there are no needles involved here. You're just using your fingers to tap, and it's doing the same thing, which is activating the body's relaxation response. In doing that, you're collapsing that stress response. And so we do the rounds of tapping as you hold the distress in mind until you're relaxed.
Huh. All righty. No, like
and so when you
no needles.
What'd you say?
I said like acupuncture, but no needles. I love the no needles part.
No needles. No needles. I'm allergic to that kind of pain.
Yes. Yes.
But, you know, this is an important topic about the anger because we have to find effective ways of dealing with the anger because of the kind of destruction it can cause when it's out of control. You know, it damages property, obviously, but it also damages relationships. So having effective tools to deal with the anger, having the willingness, even the courage, dare I say, to go into those intense pockets of anger to find out what's really there, it's really important for how we are in the world and who we are to other people.
Wow. Well, Alicia, let me ask you this, because unfortunate, you know, like we said prior, that we've seen so many things on television. It seems like media, you know, we being media personalities ourselves, but some of them, I mean, you can look at the ratings, depending on what it is. I think 9/11, for example, they say some cable stations had to get more. I mean, they actually had to hire more people to cover the whole event. They actually had, their ratings went out the palooza of covering the events. So we as people, unfortunate or fortunate, we're going to say, you know, both ends of the coin, I'm assuming, we like, forgive the word, but we like scandals. And I'm saying we, of course, not all of us, because me personally, I had to turn 9/11 off because I truly internalized it to the point that I was making myself sick, not trying to say I didn't, you know, care for the, you know, everyone was involved, because I believe all of us was involved with that, and the whole world, not just the United States. But the point I'm saying is, we don't realize how the anger is affecting our, you know, especially we have family, we have kids. And the thing about it, when you were saying, you know, because I know when I counsel people in grief, unfortunate, sometimes 3 people may have died in the 1 month. Now, with anger, if something happened when I was a child, and that actually happened to me when you were saying that, kids used to mess with me all the time because I was always tall with glasses. So my nickname was Olive Oil, so that was negative for me. But then, you know, what if something happened again in my, let's say when I was in high school and college, did I kind of multiply my feelings? You know, I'm going to use myself as an example because I think what happens sometimes, and you please help us with this, it's not just one experience. Unfortunately, it's a lot of experiences added up together, and then unfortunately, that's when people kind of do things way out of their character.
I am so glad you said that, because this is one of my favorite things to talk about. It's a game of references and rehearsals. So you're right. The first event that happens when somebody's calling you audible and it's happening on the playground and you're feeling that powerlessness, that's the first reference. Then it happens again in the classroom. Then it happens again in high school, or something like it happens. So each time you have a reference, you feel those feelings. So essentially, you are rehearsing the feelings of being powerless or being helpless every time a new reference is introduced. Then that reference and those references and that rehearsal is so practiced inside of you, you start to believe that that's who you are. And when somebody tries to tell you, no, there's nothing wrong with your legs, you're fine, when you look inside your mind, you have a whole list of references that prove that you're right. So what you want to do is you want to go to those references and you want to release the emotional charge around those references so that you can gain the perspective. That's when you can look back at the playground situation and say, okay, those were kids and they weren't being very nice. That's a whole different experience than looking back and still feeling the pain of being on the playground. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't change the past, but you can change how you hold and represent it. And most importantly, you can change who you believe yourself to be in relationship to it. So when I was growing up, I thought I wasn't smart. And I suffered from an intellectual inferiority complex. Even though I was great at English and I was always great at speaking and I was great at writing, I just didn't believe I was smart. And I had enough references to show me that I wasn't. What was really going on is I was suffering from self-esteem issues because I was dealing with the abandonment of my father as a child. I had no idea how much of an impact that was having on me, but it made me feel less than. So when I came to school, I wasn't bringing my A game. I didn't believe I had an A game. I didn't believe I was worth anything. So when I started getting these poor grades, that was more proof, more references, right, that I wasn't smart. Am I making sense? Are you tracking with me?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So now I go out. I don't get the grades. I barely graduated from high school. I have all these references, all this proof that I'm not smart. And I keep rehearsing the feelings that come along with it, to the point where I wouldn't go to school to get my degree until, like 7 years ago. Because I had to deal with what was behind my belief about myself and that powerlessness and the helplessness and the sense of not being smart. I had to go back and deal with those emotions that kept me down and give myself some perspective about what was really going on in order to tap into what was already there, which is my ability to succeed like everybody else has. I just couldn't connect to it. So that's the long answer to your question of, yes, it starts one place, but then more references get added. And then as the references get added, the feelings get rehearsed. It's references and rehearsal.
Well, Letitia, I want to ask you, since you brought that point up, so often we're seeing so much with our kids and bullying, and we see all these teens and these young kids that are going through depression. And unfortunately, we're constantly seeing things on the news about these children that are committing suicide. And, people will say, well, it's just normal for you to go to school and be teased or bullied. But, the things you're pointing out, these things that have been researched, sometimes these are things, from very early on. How do we as parents, how do we as teachers, how do we as society, what can we do to recognize these things in our children and be able to intervene before we just write things off as simple kid stuff to avoid the suicides or the unrecognized depression that they're going through at even an earlier age?
So, even now, even though we're living in a different day, there's still a mindset that children don't know stuff.
Right.
We still treat children like what they're going through is not significant. So a child will come home and they'll be sad about what happened in school, but you're working 2 jobs and you're saying stuff like, well, you don't know anything. You don't have any real problems.
Right.
Okay. So what that teaches the child is that what's going on inside of them does not matter. So if you teach your child that how they feel does not matter, that in and of itself is a great recipe for feeling helpless and like they have no power over what happens to them. So I would say for parents, you really want to pay attention to what your child is bringing to you. And if your child seems like they're really upset about something that you think is really small, I would recommend that you think again about that. One of my clients was 15. And the cool thing about working with her as a 15-year-old, to your point, Dr. Sunday, she doesn't have all these references, okay? But she does have some. But whatever she's bringing to me, I'm taking every single thing she's saying seriously. If she's talking about a relationship she's in, I'm not looking at her as a person who doesn't know anything, like she's not an adult yet. I'm paying full attention to how she is dealing with herself, what she's saying to herself about what's happening with her friends, with her boyfriends, and at school. I'm treating her as if she was a 45-year-old woman. So parents shifting to really plugging in and listening to what their child is saying and taking it seriously is the very first step. And even if those feelings don't make you comfortable because maybe they're talking about something that's outside of your comfort zone, it's important for you to shift out of that discomfort and into the presence of where they are because of what's being created inside of them. What you really want to know is what your child is telling themselves about what's happening in their lives. So a good question to ask is, how do you feel about that? How did that make you feel? What does that mean to you? And walking them through that, but taking it seriously.
Wow. I'm thinking back while we're going through this session. I'm thinking back. You're right. We as kids, and I'm not 50 yet. I go on and say that, but we didn't talk as much. One thing I do commend the kids nowadays. I see it in my niece and nephew that they'll speak up, but the thing about it is like you said, Letitia, so wonderfully, how we respond to them, because a lot of times the hustle and bustle of being a parent that we don't take the time to sit and talk, to listen to them. And unfortunate, because I've heard people say this, that the games they will listen, or older man, and if it's a little girl, or how this situation may be. So a lot of times the people that listen to them are the people that actually can put them in danger and change their whole life. Versus we as parents, as grandparents, et cetera, sitting down and listening. So I one thing, and I know I've said this a couple of times, I commend you for opening up your practice in the coaching that you do to younger people, because as kids in general, we take them for granted. I'm going to just say it that way. And what they feel and what they believe is wow, we need to take that to heart.
My mother had no idea that I was nurturing feelings of being unworthy. My mother worked 2 jobs. I mean, she bent over backwards to provide for me. She did everything she could to get me not just the stuff that I needed, but the stuff that I wanted. But she had no idea inside that I felt unworthy. I didn't talk to her about that. And that belief that I wasn't worthy or that I wasn't smart and all the self-esteem stuff that came, all the work that she was doing to try to provide for me, I was so attached to those other feelings, it was hard for me to even connect to what she was putting in.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
So it would have been great if we had a maybe a talk time where I felt like I could just bring her whatever was on my heart. It just wasn't set up that way. I mean, this is definitely nothing against my mom, but to our point, that's not how we are connecting with our children. We're not setting up the pathway for those kind of deep conversations. Because if she had known that that's what I was going through inside, she would have stopped that. You know what I mean? Like, she would have been able to penetrate that. But I wasn't in a place where I could bring it. So I would say if parents are witnessing, their children being angry or their children being, shy or whatever, that they set up some kind of pathway of communication where they give that child an opening to share whatever is going on in their heart so that they can speak something different into their lives. But you got to take your feelings seriously. And it's harder as adults if we don't take our feelings seriously. For some reason, we get caught up and believe that we shouldn't care about how we feel. And that's not a good place to be.
That's so true. Working with nonprofit youth programs, that's why my emphasis is always on the youth, because similar to what you were saying, I lived in a household. I had my childhood issues. Of course, my mom knew of the childhood abuse that was going on. But the issue is a lot of times, these cycles repeat themselves. So, you have one generation that has these issues and they're just doing what they can to provide for their children the best way they can. But even in that, what they think they know, children also are very good at masking certain things. And definitely in environments where they feel like they can't share or, I see moms going through this or dad's going through this, I don't want to be a burden. So they hide things. So, I take on that adage that, was repeated or cliche that was repeated when I was growing up by the older people, it takes a village. And, that's where it's so important from the educators to community leaders to teachers to just all people, church members, really engaging with our youth. They don't have to be your child. But sometimes just little conversations or things you can craft out to take that moment to just encourage them or check in with them, see how they're doing. Because sometimes they're just not in the space where they're going to share with the parents, but they may share with another adult or they may share with that person that takes that time just to engage with them. So I think that's something that, whether it's a single parent or whatever the situation is, we all need to play more of an active role in being, our brother's keeper, checking in on the kids, checking in on one another, because sometimes it's just taking that one moment, to engage them. And once you engage them, they'll start sharing and revealing some things that opens that door of communication to also for you to reveal and share some things and maybe see some underlying issues where there's additional help that they really need.
Yeah, and the Bible says, love thy neighbor as you love yourself. So the question is, how are you teaching your child to love themselves? What's the love plan?
Yep. Well,
and that has to start with, Well, it's true. If you're not teaching them how to love themselves, they're going to love their neighbor like they love themselves. So if your child is bullying people, that is how they feel in relationship to themselves. We cannot give what we do not have.
Absolutely. And for
So
some, that's
if you are, what'd you say?
I said for some that is the problem, because it's hard for them to teach that child to love themselves because they, as the adult, don't love themselves. They don't know what that is.
And this brings us full circle back to going to what's going on and really ask yourself what is really at the heart of what's happening here.
Yes.
It's not just that the person cut me off on the interstate because it's 2 hours later and I'm still mad. Something else is going on. But I have to care about how I feel. And if we teach our children not to care about how they feel, then when they start getting involved in behavior that it seems is bad or wrong, they don't know how to love themselves. And I know the show tonight is about anger and not love, but that's really at the base of it, right? Because if you think back to the last show we talked about the body's stress response being activated. Like when we talk about fear, it's basically it's a defense mechanism. So if you're in this state or this place and you're feeling this sense of helplessness or hopelessness, that's not a good place to be. The only place to get some power is to reach for anger. Okay, because it's above powerlessness. You see? So your stress response is actually rising up as a defense against that helpless feeling or against that powerless feeling. It's all there to protect you. It's all a part of the human experience. It's just when that stuff is in overdrive, that's our cue that we got to go in deeper.
And I love how you say when it's in overdrive, because actually anger in overdrive, too long, too much, can actually kill you.
Yes.
It's a variety of
So
ways.
I've talked about the stress. Well, yeah, and I talk about the stress response, but to get a little medical with the stress response, it is actually producing chemicals. That's why, again, I love the Incredible Hulk experience, because he overexposed himself to chemicals, to the gamma rays. And what happens in an anger situation, when your stress response gets activated, there are chemicals being activated and surging through your body like cortisol. Cortisol is not there you're not supposed to have the high levels and high doses of cortisol pumping through your bloodstream every single day. That's the stuff that was given to you to run from a bear. Not to deal with the lady at Walmart who made you upset. You know what I'm saying? So when you constantly tap back into your anger through your references and you keep rehearsing it, you're also activating your body's stress response, which is literally producing these chemicals that are now surging through your body your body is not designed to hold those chemicals at those high levels. That's how you get the heart attack. That's how you get the high blood pressure. That's what stress does. That is the stress response overactivated.
Okay.
Well, Letitia, we want to do better and I'm so glad you're on that purpose, because you take care of all of this through your sessions. Let's go back to that, because we finally admit, because that's the first step. They say even with stopping drinking alcohol and smoking, we admit we do have the anger past that 10 minutes you told us, or even that hour sometimes.
Yep.
Well, we meet it on international airs, okay? So when we actually have sessions with you, I know you talked a little bit about the young lady that you have in your practice, and the tapping that we do. But when we actually set up appointments with you, give us a kind of, a brief analogy of that, of how we can start working on getting, resolving this angle, or even getting it down to the less than 1 hour.
Yes.
Yeah, so what I do when my clients sign up for programs, I have different programs. Like I have a single session. We can do things in a single session, but we also have a 3-session, we have a 6-session, and we have a 12-session. When you sign up for the 3, the 6, or the 12 session, I have my clients write what I call a peace list. And a peace list is anything that has happened in your life ever that you can think of that you want to make peace with. Whether it was that episode on the playground or in a classroom or you got a fear of math, it doesn't matter. Anything that has been in your consciousness that you want to make peace with, I ask people to just write down like you would call, for example, Dr. Sunday. If you had that memory that was still active and you felt bad about it, you could just write olive oil because that represents something to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So people write the peace list and they bring the peace list. And what we do, I'm looking at the peace list. We're talking people through what's going on. But what I want to know before we start doing the peace list is, what do you want? For some reason, our brains are trained to focus on what we do not want. And so people will say, oh, I don't want to feel this way anymore, or I don't want to go through this anymore. So I have to first orient you to what you want. And when we know what you want, then what we start doing is working through the peace list and releasing the emotional charge for what has happened in the past so that you're not feeling that stress response around those things. And from that place of neutrality, you can start to see a better sense of who you can be. And that's when we start instilling and imprinting on you what you want. So peace list, tell me what you want. Let's tap. Let's remove the emotional charge around the stuff that makes you feel bad. And then let's imprint what you do want. And that's how we move forward.
I'm going to ask a question.
So you release? Yeah, what you got?
What does it mean if it's easier for you to tell a person what you don't want versus to pinpoint what you actually want?
So somebody who's been, say really sad or depressed for a long time. Well, I'll take myself for an example. So my grandmother passed away in 1998, and it was a devastating experience because she still is like the love of my life. She was like my soulmate. And so it was so painful for me, I couldn't even look at her picture. Like I could not look at the picture. It just hurt to look at it. So all I was conscious of is I didn't want to feel the pain of her being gone anymore. Uh-huh. That's all I could focus on. I don't want to do, okay. So, but that's not a goal, right? Because I could list all day and all night what I didn't want, but the absence of something is not the presence of something. So the question then became, what do I want? And what I wanted to tap back into all the love I felt. I wanted to feel the good memories I felt when I thought about her. I wanted to remember those words of wisdom that she bestowed to me. And I couldn't get there because I was locked in that loop of the painful feelings. But when I could shift my focus to what I actually wanted, it gave me space to clean up that emotional charge so that when that charge was gone, I could tap back into all the ways that she had been the blessing in my life. That's what I mean by focusing on what you want versus focusing on what you don't want. So if we think about anger, it's not, I don't want to be angry anymore, I don't want to be mad anymore. No, it's what do you want? Do you want peace? Do you want a sense of control? Do you want to feel powerful? What is it that you want? And when you get clear about what you want, when we remove that emotional charge, you have an awareness that those things are a part of your experience too. And we talked about this in a previous show, borrowing. So sometimes what will happen is you may not be able to clearly define what you want, but you may see somebody who has something like you want. They hold up their confidence. So there's a feeling of confidence that you get when you look at a person being confident. So you can borrow their confidence. But it moves you into this orientation of what you want. And from that place, then you clear out whatever it is that's holding you back. And then you open your heart and your mind to what's possible.
And just in case any listeners have a question about that, how do you borrow or tap into someone else's confidence, for example?
Yeah, so, I talked tonight about having these self-esteem issues, but then deciding I wanted to go to college. And I remember watching Barack Obama give that Yes, We Can speech when he lost the New Hampshire primary. And it sparked something in me. And I thought to myself, if this man believes he can be the first black president of the United States of America, I think I can take some classes at the community college. You know what I mean? Like, he was doing something on such a massive scale. And he needed confidence to do that. And when I watched him give that speech, I felt a sense of that confidence in myself. So we have heroes, whether it's a superhero or whether it's an author or whether it's a speaker, and when we listen to them, watch them, hear them, we feel a sense of empowerment. That's how you borrow. You go to the place where you can feel powerful based on what you're observing and experiencing, and then you grow that feeling of power inside of yourself. How do you grow it? You reflect on it. You think about it. You tap back into those feelings. That's how you borrow.
Love it.
Because when you think about
some
of
I'm
the...
up here thinking now of who I can borrow.
You can borrow from anybody. I mean, there's so many examples now. I mean, think about one of my favorites, Oprah Winfrey. She's got the same kind of stuff in her background that I've had in my background. The abuse issues, the esteem issues. She has that in her background. But somehow she got connected to what was possible for her, and she plugged into that at a deeper level so that she could leave all that stuff behind. Do you know what I'm saying? So when I'm watching her, I'm drawing strength from her because she's been willing to share her experience. I know you can overcome it. It's part of the reason why I'm doing the work I'm doing. There's no reason, if you look at my history, that I should be able to be doing what I'm doing. But I know how to overcome. And I'm not just talking about survive. I know how to thrive. I know how to excel. How do I do it? I work through the stuff that I feel is holding me back. I look to the sources of inspiration, and I borrow from them. And it doesn't mean I don't have down times and I don't have periods where I go through things. I do. But I've learned how to shorten my cycle time. Okay?
All right.
Okay? So I'm not going to be locked into something for, a year or whatever. I've got tools and I have other practitioners that I can go to. I know how to shorten my cycle time. But like everybody else, life is still going to keep being life, and things are going to happen, and some of those things are not going to be pleasant. But because of what I've already lived, I already know. I'm an overcomer.
All right.
So when you look at other people who are overcomers, that's how you borrow. So you start thinking about being conscious. Dr. Sunday, you mentioned, getting caught up and watching things like on a 9/11 scale where you're watching, these horrible things over and over again. I think we can be conscious of what we're putting in our minds, what we're watching on TV, what we're listening to on the radio, how much news we're taking in. We can control all of those things.
Uh-huh.
So if I'm listening, I love Audible, the Amazon app. So I listen to books all the time, but I always listen to books that lift me up. I watch movies that inspire me because I want to be the best that I can be for my clients. And so, again, if I'm not caring about how I feel and I'm not taking the time to love myself, I'm going to love my neighbor like I love me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And that can be a dangerous combination, depending on how the person loves themselves. And we have to wait tonight, we really need to take care of that one. But I love how you always get so practical and so doable and just reflective of, we don't have to be in that helpless situation or that hopeless situation. There are resources out there, and it doesn't have to be so complicated or so confusing. There's things that we can actually do right now to improve our situation.
It's one of the reasons that I love tapping, because here's what I know about every client that sits in my chair or I do a Skype session or a phone session with. All the answers are in that client. There's not any answer that does not already exist within the client. When I help the client shift that emotional charge away from them and they are from that place of neutrality, they can see their power. They can experience their power. They can see what is good about them. They can see how much work it took to get to where they are. It gives them perspective. It helps them gain respect for themselves. It helps them revere even their worst days because they've survived it. But the answers are in that client. So in order for me to help that client get to where they've got to get to, I have to believe that I have the ability to take them there. So that's why I walk my talk. And the tapping is such a powerful tool, but it's not hard to do.
Uh-huh.
So when I take them through that process, I can also teach them how to tap. So if they're dealing with something much more intense, then we work through it together. But if they're at work and they're stressed out, or they're driving down the street and they're stressed out, they have a tool in their hands that they can use to take them out of that stress response. It's a powerful thing.
It is.
And the other thing is to remember that when you get angry or any of those other feelings, you're trying to protect yourself from the helplessness, the hopelessness, and the powerlessness. And when you respect the part of you that's reaching for the powerful person that you really, really are, it makes it so much easier to navigate. So I always offer to go to atthewillcoaching.com and schedule a free 15-minute consultation. And for Sunday Soul Service listeners, I offer a 10% discount on any of my coaching programs. Be sure to join me on the third Tuesday of every month on Sunday Soul Service. Before we go, are there any final thoughts or words, Dr. Sunday or Alicia?
Well, I'm just so excited of this session. It gets, as we used to say, it gets better and better. Just like I think wine or something they used to say. But I just, the thing that's so wonderful about your platform is, and not saying anything about other coaches, but I'm just being real. As the kids say, keep it 100. You have lived this experience, so you telling us from a deeper dive than you could ever imagine, because you can tell us from the science of it, if you will, to the actual experience. So we thank you so much. We just thank you that you actually are so transparent and that you are helping so many people's lives.
Well, it is an absolute blessing to have this platform, and it's always great to tune in with the two of you. And what I will say is if the pain of your past is keeping you down, start driving your life to higher ground.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Sunday Soul Service, brought to you by me, Dr. Renee Sunday, the Platform Builder. Tune in every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for an uplifting, power-packed hour designed to help you believe, trust, and walk it out. And always remember, I love you, but God loves you best.